everyone, this is Boricua Binks and welcome back to Let's Play Seduce Me to the Demon War. The last episode we were heading towards the castle to do the final battle with the Demon Lord. And what was cool is that we got to use our shadow powers that we learned. And we were protecting our bae, James. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, let's continue on. I'm very excited to see where this is gonna go. Okay, now we're in the castle. The ringing sound of clashing swords greeted me and James as we sprinted into the castle and towards the main hall. James placed a hand in front of me as I spotted the battle waging at the foot of the throne die. I think it's pronounced die, but I'm not sure. And what's interesting, out of all his sons, I would say James looks the most like him. Diana and the Demon Lord slammed their swords against each other over and over in violent repetition, with Diana level to her tall opponent in flight. Just from the force behind their swings, you would think that their swords would break and bend. Ooh, that's pretty interesting. The sound of their steel, however, could not cover the snarls that erupted from each of them as they pressed against the clash between them.
It's over, you brute bastard! We'll see about that!
With a heavy grunt, the Demon Lord pushed his sword forward with a pulse of red energy, causing Diana to fly back and slam into a pillar with a painful thud.
Ah!
Uh-oh. Diana crumpled to the ground, her wings instinctively folding in against her back from the impact. However, it only took a second for her to recover and look up with a rejuvenated glare. Vaulting off of the ground, Diana flew at the Demon Lord once more and slammed her sword into his, a large burst of purple flames erupting from between their weapons.
Rah! I will send you to hell where you belong!
Do it, girl, do it. James and I watched in silence as Diana and the Demon Lord danced their deadly duel, not wanting to get in the way of either of their rage. After all, James was merely a backup, and Diana seemed fine so far. For some reason, however, as I stared at Diana, something about her hits looked almost effortless, like something was guiding her sword to land each strike. Was she that skilled in combat? After a flurry of deadlocks, Diana finally managed to swing her sword at an angle, slicing the back of the Demon Lord's hand and making him drop his weapon.
Rah, you!
The Demon Lord quickly stepped back and reared his other hand back, forming a large red orb in his hand. However, as soon as he thrust it forward, it began to dissolve and dissipate in the air, vanishing completely before it reached Diana's body.
What?
Oh? What's going on here? Diana stared in shock at the occurrence, taking in that his attack didn't hit her, before she slowly grew a smirk on her face and a golden glow over her blood-red irises.
Looks like you're all out of energy.
With another angry growl, the Demon Lord repeated his action, only to stare in disbelief as it evaporated into the air. It was large enough when in his hand, yet it vanished all too quickly. Something was wrong. Diana didn't seem to care as she lifted her hand back behind her and formed a large purple orb in her palm before shooting it forward. The orb slammed into the Demon Lord's chest and pushed him back against a pillar harshly, forming large cracks in the stone at the impact.
It's over!
With her battle cry, Diana gripped onto her saber with both hands and flew forward, charging to skewer the Demon Lord through the chest. As she began to fly forward, I gasped at the sight of white feathers slowly painting over Diana's demonic wings. I had a feeling all of this is going too easily for her, so that means I guess the angels are interfering on her behalf? That's kind of strange. Angels were here. Wait! Diana wasn't listening. Her eyes became completely glossed over in a gold color as a strange white glow began to emanate from her form like a holy light and guided her forward towards her intended victim. I mean, even if the angels are interfering, isn't it a good thing if she kills him, though? Within a mere blink, Diana had run her saber through the demon lord's chest, piercing through his heart and impaling him against the pillar. James and I could do nothing but stare in shock at what Diana had done and what was happening to the succubus in question. Her body let off an almost ethereal white glow as she snarled into the demon lord's face.
May Satan take you and tear you apart in the pits of hell.
My body shuddered in fear at the sound of her voice. While she naturally had some sort of demonic resonance as she spoke, something else was laced into her voice, giving it almost a celestial lift and tone. The demon lord's eyes glazed over and soon lost their light as he ever so slowly went limp over the blade embedded within him, blood slowly dripping from his mouth and onto Diana's forearms. Diana, however, released the handle of her blade and glided back, shaking her arms to rid them of the demon lord's blood. Despite what I normally expected from Diana, the succubus didn't seem to care that her mortal enemy had fallen at last. She didn't even seem to care that her wings had become angelic and covered in beautiful white feathers. If it wasn't for her tainted demon skin and horns, I would imagine Diana at that moment to be confused as the angels I imagined from the human world. The reality of the situation, however, was apparent. Something was wrong with Diana.
It is done. It is over.
I looked to James, seeing his cautious but deadly glare burn itself onto Diana's form as she looked up at him, eyes still glazed over in a gold glow.
It isn't truly over, is it?
Diana stared at the pair of us for a moment before lowering herself onto her feet on the floor and letting her new angelic wings fold against her back patiently. With an almost sickeningly sweet smile, Diana lifted her hand towards James and beckoned to him.
You are correct. You must take your throne, Restrau.
My anger flared at the sound of his true name escaping her lips, but my soul began to quiver in fear. Diana was being controlled by angels, and now she seemed to be an instrument for James's destiny. James, however, remained at my side, glaring hard at Diana still, with a hand across my body in protection.
You do not have permission to use my name with such familiarity.
And why do you say that? I am the queen of the demon world now, and you are my betrothed.
Diana ran her hands through her hair and over her horns, dragging them down her neck and over each curve on her upper body seductively. This was definitely not Diana.
My mind, body, and soul are completely yours, as is the domination of this world. I share these pleasures and power with you, with the purest love from the bottom of my heart, as your true, universally intended bride.
Why do the angels want the two of them to be in charge? That's what's so strange. James reached his hand back and took my hand, knowing that her words were digging into my mind with edges of betrayal and annoyance. I knew James wouldn't accept her, but I also knew that this was not Diana, so who knew what the angel controlling her would do next? Diana tilted her head to the side, slowly lowering herself onto her knees and stretching her arms by her sides, baring herself to us.
Unless you desire me to be your slave, I will happily give you the throne and eternally serve you until the end of time.
Enough! Release her and reveal yourself, Seraph!
I gripped James's hand, staring wide-eyed at Diana as she simply chuckled and guided her hands together, pressing her palms between her breasts and leaning back to stare at the high marble ceiling.
This child of Lilith is offering herself to you, demon. Yet you refuse to take it.
You know my answer.
It is a foolish answer. This demoness can become a vessel of power for you, the mother of your lineage. What more can you desire that the human can hope to provide?
Stop it! This time I had to interject. This was wrong and underhanded. Whatever spell Diana was under gripped her tightly enough to become some sort of twisted submissive to James, and no part of me appreciated it. This angel was some sort of sick and twisted being that needed to be stopped somehow. James finally stepped forward, forming a sword in his hand and staring down at it in serious thought.
An angel like you can never understand the desires I hold.
That is because your desires are misplaced. You know deep in your heart that you desire to rule over this world. Your demonic blood craves the power.
I watched James gaze deep into the steel of his blade, locking eyes with himself. Still, he continued to speak.
It is true that some part of me wishes to rule this world. Some darker, unfeeling shadow of the past that was raised to live and become the ultimate lord of this plane.
As James gripped the handle of his sword tightly, he shifted his gaze to Diana's body.
But my heart knows where it belongs. With the human who loves me as I love her!
My heart fluttered in my chest at James's words, feeling every ounce of passion and determination embedded with each sound. Diana, however, let out a dark laugh.
Love, how fleeting. Your defiance comes from such a weak emotion.
As Diana finally straightened back up, I stepped back from the sight of her eyes. Instead of black pupils, her golden eyes held two dark crosses burning within her lost irises. The smirk on her face intensified, almost like a Cheshire Cat's sickening grin. This is so intense, you guys. I don't know how we're gonna free her from the angel, you know?
Allow me to show you a power greater than love!
Uh-oh. With a hard flap of her wings, Diana jutted forward, forming another saber in her hand and arcing it across James. Her target countered in reply, clashing his sword to hers with a heavy clang. I instantly jumped back, away from the fight, as James and Diana began to clash swords again and again. James's face showed his pure concentration, as Diana's cackled in both an insane glee and obsessive desire.
Fight however you like! You cannot escape your destiny!
Ooh, this music's pretty good.
I will, and you will not stop me!
The speed of their clashes increased. The rapid sounds of steel beating steel crashed through the air like a wave of violent drums. They were equally matched, and neither seemed to be close to giving in. How long would this fight go for? I knew Diana was probably exhausted from the fight, but the angel was working through her, so there was a chance that her exhaustion wouldn't matter. Then again, James had not lifted a finger yet in this war, so he had energy to spare. The entire situation became full of confusion and concern as James and Diana continued to duel without hesitation or need for air. As James took a heavy swing towards Diana, the succubus leaped back and sank gracefully on her feet, using her wings to ease her descent and stance, while she licked her lips.
Love is a fleeting game! Those who expect it to bring happiness will only experience sorrow in the end!
You're wrong! I was tired of this angel trying to get in between me and James. Enough was enough. I stepped forward, trying desperately to find more energy within me to fight alongside James, but spoke out regardless. You don't know anything about love!
I know more than you ever will, human. I have lived for eons serving heaven, and have watched your kind rant and rave all about love and its existence.
Diana lifted her hand to her chest, grasping at it over where her heart was, and almost laughed at me and my words.
You humans use love for the most meaningless of things. I love him, I love her, I love this, I love that. You claim love to be a powerful emotion, yet you can't even give it the power it supposedly deserves, as you use it for everything.
I know there are some people who do overuse the word love, you know? I'm not one of them. Like, I can't even, in the back of my mind, thinking of when's the last time I actually said that other than, like, to my mom or my dog. You know?
I've watched that word fall on deaf ears. I've seen lives destroyed, despite love guiding them forward. The mere word has become a throwaway amalgam of letters, used to express minor joy for things that will decay and die in the end.
Love is stronger than you think. It doesn't matter what you think. I think either way it's true, but I'll say love is stronger than you think. I knew deep down that the emotion of love was stronger than this angel could have ever imagined. This wasn't something it could debate against when I had experienced it firsthand with the man it was trying to take away. Diana laughed and shook her head, guffawing at my exclamation before stretching her arms out to the side.
Love is weak! I have claimed the body of a succubus who is full of true love, and not even her love could stop me!
I stared wide-eyed at Diana. She was in love? Of course she is, with Cero. Even more so, she had a pure and true love. But if love was the factor behind control, then something was off. I shook my head and glared once more at Diana, burying my gaze into her eyes at the angel who was controlling her movements. You controlling her has nothing to do with love. You're taking advantage of her being weak from the fight with the Demon Lord. Finally, Diana's face melted into a glare as she bared her teeth at me and growled.
You know nothing! Less than nothing! Filthy, unclean human! You open your mouth and spout nonsense and forget your place in the universe!
Diana's saber began to glow an unfriendly white color as Diana's hand began to quake holding it. Was Diana fighting back, or was the angel's anger shaking her limbs with rage? I wasn't able to tell.
I will erase you!
Uh-oh. A hard flap of Diana's wings made Diana fly forward towards me, sword held high to rip me in two. However, her blade was met with James as he rushed up and guarded me.
You!
James pressed back against Diana's saber, his body glowing a dark gold color in response to her ever-growing aura.
Your battle is with me, Angel. I will not let you touch her.
With a heavy snarl, Diana pressed herself against the deadlock, leaning towards James and practically frothing at the mouth.
I will make you yield!
Unaffected by her scream, James summoned a burst of yellow energy forward, knocking Diana back towards the throne die. Diana flipped back and floated in the air gracefully, shaking her head before sneering at James. The demons sprang at each other once more, slamming their swords together in hopes to push the other away or strike their opponent down. Purple and gold clashed through the room, the speed of their duel growing exponentially with each hit and parry. Watching Diana, however, I could tell that exhaustion was hitting her hard physically. Her hits became wild and thrown by adrenaline instead of with purpose and intent to kill. The angel wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Thank goodness, this is going on a long time. It's very stressful and tiring at the same time. I'm like, oh my god, please don't let anybody die. James was putting up a good fight despite this, easily blocking and dodging her attacks before pummeling a barrage of his own, laced with gold energy that burst between their swords at each hit. As soon as an opening became available once again, James gripped onto Diana's wrist and twisted it back, making her release her saber with a painful scream, ouch, and causing him to drop his own sword.
Enough of this!
Okay, let's do it. Do something! Free her! Using the momentum of his attack, James spun Diana around so her arm was almost dislocated behind her, ooh, and slammed his feet into the back of her knees, causing her to buckle forward and land with two painful thuds. James, however, pushed Diana farther down and slammed her body onto the ground, trapping her arm against her back with a foot and gripping onto Diana's large wings with both hands. Oh no! I gasped. He wasn't going to rip them off of her, right? With a concentrated glare on the back of Diana's head. Oh no! His fist tightened around Diana's feathery wings and suddenly sent a wave of golden flames through them. The fire stopped at Diana's back, only consuming the wings in a gold and red flame. Ooh. I'm hoping that's just getting rid of the angel wings and not her real wings. Diana's scream echoed through the room, bouncing off of the floor and walls in a frenzy as she could do nothing but feel the flames engulf her wings. The feathers that painted over them began to burn and dissolve into ash, falling around her. Soon enough, the pain became unbearable enough to force Diana to make her wings vanish back into her skin, where 2 large burn marks signed themselves.
I'm sorry.
Ooh, I think he did get rid of her actual wings. Not giving Diana a single ounce of mercy, James dug his foot beneath her body and flipped her over, causing her back to arch in pain from the impact of her burns in the marble. Smoke snaked out from her back as she gasped loudly. As Diana opened her mouth and let out her breath, James quickly grasped onto her neck, squeezing tightly and causing the succubus beneath him to choke. James! Come on, man. We're just trying to get the angel out of her. Don't kill the woman. Neither demon would hear me as Diana grabbed onto James's wrist and began to claw at them, desperate to make him let go of her. Her eyes began to flicker from gold to their original clear white and red colors as Diana could do nothing but spasm from lack of air. Stop him or don't? Why wouldn't I stop him? Of course I'm going to stop him. I needed to stop him before he killed her. The angel wasn't worth her death. I rushed forward and grabbed onto James's arm, making him look up at me as I knelt down beside him. James, stop it! You'll kill Diana! James stared at me, taking in what I had said with the same surprised look before looking down at the succubus beneath him and glaring hard. Was he going to kill her anyway?
Come out and fight me.
With a burst of energy surging through James's hands, Diana arched back, a spray of frothy saliva and blood erupting from her mouth towards the far wall. Ew. James's grip had loosened around her neck, but Diana's body continued to spasm from James's attack. Diana's eyes rolled into the back of her head, finally fading from gold to white as she gasped for air and her body relaxed at last. As Diana's body finally went limp and settled onto the marble, a large white aura of smoke wisped out of her chest and shot itself at the thrown die, settling on the steps and slowly growing taller in place. The white smoke finally formed into a familiar cloaked being who was arched forward with his veiny hands tensed out beside him. Something about the angel, however, seemed different than before, as if he had somehow gained energy from being within Diana.
You filthy cur! You continue to try and defy your destiny when it is useless!
James stood and glared hard at the angel, forming his sword once again in his hand and pointing it towards his new opponent. His body began to glow, and the room began to brighten at his golden aura.
I have no such destiny to remain in this world. My life is bound to the one I love, not to an empty chair gained through blood.
You will have no choice in the matter!
Let's kill this angel. Like 2 bullets, James and the angel rushed at each other and collided with James's sword against the angel's bare hands. I expected James's blade to tear through the angel's flesh, the steel pressed against the angel's hands like it was grazing stone. The angel gripped to James's blade and slowly began to crush it beneath his hands, causing the magic surrounding it to falter and fade. James and I stared wide-eyed as the angel was able to rip the broken piece of the sword off and toss it to the side like it was plastic. Dang! These angels are overpowered. Determined still, James shot his energy through his sword and reformed the blade, going once again for another attack, only to be blocked by the angel's forearms. A Upon impact, the steel of the blade shattered like glass, falling to the ground.
I am no mere servant of heaven, demon. I am the keeper of destiny, the scribe of fates. You cannot defeat me no matter what spells you conjure.
Okay, why are we still hearing that if I thought the sword broke? There we go. Upon his final words, the angel pressed his hands forward and slammed them against James's chest, forcing him to fly back and slam into the far wall. James! I instantly began to rush towards him, but found myself being lifted off of the ground by the back of my neck and pulled away from James towards the angel.
No!
I grabbed at the back of my neck, feeling the angel's hand grip it tightly and keep my body afloat somehow. His hand felt indeed like stone and concrete, grazing against my skin roughly and almost tearing at the flesh as I struggled. Ugh. Let me go!
I should have forced you to choose from the beginning, demon. This human will not see reason to let you go, but I know that you will see reason in the offer I will graciously give you now.
Oh no. The angel held my body out, dangling me in the air like a doll, as I flailed and clawed at the angel's arm. My nails merely scratched against his stone skin as I felt my energy slowly deplete even further than it was in my spirit.
Accept your fate, demon, and I will bring her back to the human world unharmed. Refuse, and I will release her to the gates of hell for the devil spawn to ravish.
It's interesting because when we first started this game, I thought the Demon Lord would be the big bad guy, you know? But he's dead, and I feel like we've had more trouble with the angels this time around. As he spoke of James's potential refusal, a large wave of heat burst out beneath my feet, causing me to look down and scream at the sight on the ground. Beneath my body was a large open circle with red flames flaring out of it. Between the flames, I could barely make out the sight of hundreds of hands reaching up to try and stretch themselves through the hole above them and towards me. Each hand, burned in red, sent waves of remembrance down my body as an image of Malix appeared in my head. Huh, I haven't even thought of him in ages. And she's screaming, which I wish I could do, but I don't want to wake up anybody. My fear only spurred me to flail harder in the hold I was in, uncaring of the friction his hand was causing my skin. I could feel blood gather and dribble from the back of my neck, flesh tearing open from my attempts. James stared up at me, quaking from the fear of the situation. We were far away from him, where he couldn't reach me even if he sprinted as I dropped. I was left to James's decision. However, something in James's eyes changed. A dark gold painted over his eyes as his body began to float in the air.
Go! As you wish!
A gasp managed to rush into my body as the angel's hand on my neck vanished without a trace. My body began to fall into the open pit below me, a wave of intense heat reaming at my legs before I felt a strong pair of arms wrap around me and pull me forward. Ooh, this music was nice too. Perfectly timed. Very heroic. What? I looked up to see James gripping me tightly, flying back away from the angel with me encased in his tight hold. As we reached the doorway of the main hall, James landed and set me down, keeping his intense glare on the angel by the throne. As the angel made their way towards us, I could feel the air become colder with each step he took.
You cannot smite me, demon. It is useless to try.
If I cannot kill you, then I will send you to a place you can never escape from.
On James's words, a large set of purple ethereal tendrils snaked around the angel's hands and neck, tugging him back roughly. James and I looked back to see Diana, risen from her unconscious state and glaring daggers into the back of the angel's cloak as her hand connected her to the tendrils around her target. It was mildly frightening to see her eyes completely coated in gold, just like James's eyes, as she snarled at her now captured victim.
How dare you defile me!
James, in retaliation, formed a large wall between himself and the angel, pushing him back in time with Diana's tendril pulls. Each time the angel dispelled one of the tendrils on his body, James pushed forward and Diana formed another tendril in its place. It became a team effort, forcing the angel back to balance his feet over the edge of the hell pit he opened. However, despite each rough tug and push James and Diana gave him, the angel continued to balance himself. With a burst of white light, the angel completely dissolved the tendrils and magic wall, jutting upwards and floating high in the air, tense and growling. The two demons, however, wouldn't let him hang around for long. Simultaneously, James and Diana pounced off of the ground and flew into the air at the angel. Diana on her summoned but damaged wings. Okay, at least they still kind of work then. And James with his new powers. Diana summoned her saber, and James formed his sword, clashing them against the angel's body. The blades didn't break, but simply pounded against the cloak the angel wore as if they were hitting armor. The angel became frazzled as he began to defend himself against two opponents, each not giving him an ounce of mercy in their attacks. It was almost dizzying to see Diana and James fly around their target, taking shots at him with ridiculous speeds. Each hit resulted with a loud clang of steel against stone that bounced around the room in an endless but random cycle. Watching Diana and James encircle the angel with attacks was like watching gold and purple fireworks going off against the moon. Suddenly, Diana's saber was launched out of her hands, causing Diana to float back a bit in shock, while James attacked the angel head-on. As the angel knocked back James's attack, Diana swooped up behind the angel and entangled her arms around his and locked her legs around his cloak while pressing herself between his wings.
What?
Max!
At her cry, purple and black lightning began to spatter and shake around the angel and Diana, freezing them in the air but electrocuting both. Oh no, Diana!
James! No!
The incubus didn't falter as he gathered energy into his blade, making it gleam an almost ethereal and godlike glow.
No! It's over!
With a large shout, James shot himself forward and impaled his sword into the angel's body, successfully ramming it through his body and skewering both the angel and Diana. No! She sacrificed herself. Gold and purple lightning wrapped around the angel, both from Diana's spell and James's blade, causing the wings on his back to burn away into bones, then to ash. The angel's hands slowly began to darken to an ashy black color from the electrocution. James ripped his blade out from his two victims, as Diana finally pushed herself away from the angel, leaving him to float in the air for a moment, frozen from the pain. As the angel began to fall, he let out a deathly scream before falling into the hell pit below. The angel's body vanished into the hell pit before a large burst of red and orange flame burst from its opening. The chaotic screams of devils erupted from the pit as the flames began to die out and vanish. Soon enough, the pit slowly closed itself, having been fed a proper body to seal it away. I collapsed onto my knees, feeling the drain of the entire situation hit me like a ferocious wave. It was over. It was over at last. But for how long? We're actually going to have to leave the episode right here. I thought we would finish it right now, but I think we still have some more stuff to do in the next episode. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've been enjoying this, and until next time, have a nice day. Bye!